starting our lesson 133, up in Fusion, blank untitled project, open up your data panel. In your student folder, you'll have 133 geometric constraints. It'll have this little F3D icon rather than the cube. You need to right click it, create Fusion design, and then it'll eventually load in here and you can hit refresh up in the top left and it'll have this object. So click and open that. We can close our data panel after it's open. So now I have 133 geometric constraints open. So this is a sketch file with a bunch of random sketches everywhere. So the way we're going to deal with this is we're going to talk about the different ways we can constrain objects. So first thing you need to do is in the bottom left, we have the sketch where all this stuff was made. If you right click that sketch, hit edit sketch, and it pulls you back into the original sketch. So we're going to start up here in the top left. So on all these, it has the command, the thing it wants you to do. It wants you to make these perpendicular. So to do that, if you look, we can kind of like drag things around. If I grab any points from these lines, everything just kind of moves and wiggles independently. You'll notice this like little icon, this little glyph, this like triangle we've talked about before is our midpoint. So this automatically constrained it a bit. So it added a midpoint constraint. When this line was made, it just happened to be on the midpoint, so it gave it an automatic constraint. So these points are locked, but the rest of the points are not. So we're going to make sure they all become locked. So making perpendicular. So we have our constraint section up here. Some of them are shown, others are not. Right now you can see how some are grayed out. That's because I have a point selected. So if I hit escape, it deselects that point and it lets me select everything, because some constraints are good for points, other constraints are good for lines, others for circles. So we're going to kind of work through some of those. But this is only some of our constraints, so we want to hit this little drop down and it shows us all constraints and gives us the full tooltip to them. So we want to make some things perpendicular. So we're going to click that perpendicular constraint. So now I have the little glyph beside my mouse, and it's that blackened mouse. So I can kind of know I'm about to do something with it. So if I click this line, I want to make it perpendicular to this line, and then it adds that glyph. It means I've made this, I've added this constraint, I've made these perpendicular. So if I hit escape, I go back to my white mouse. If I go to drag this now, those things stay perpendicular. I can't make them unperpendicular. I can change other things about them, but they have to remain perpendicular to one another. Continuing on, make all three lines parallel to one another. So constraints. Ooh, I still have something selected there, so I'll hit escape. Constraints, I have a parallel constraint. If I click any line, I'll click this line and the one next to it, and it makes those two parallel to one another. I click this third line and click the one of the first two, and it makes those parallel. And you've noticed this has two glyphs on it because this line is parallel to the one on the left and it's parallel to the line on the right. So it has a glyph of parallel for both of those. So all these lines are parallel, which just means they're going in the exact same direction. They have the exact same slope. So that's our parallel constraint. So here we need to dimension number 3 to make it a 2-inch diameter. And then we need to fix circles 1 and 2, and then make number 3 tangent to 1 and 2. So 3 things we need to do. So first, to dimension, if we hit the letter D, it brings up our dimension tool. So we can hit this circle. If we drag away, it gives us the option to kind of set a dimension. So if we click anywhere, it has the numbers there. I want it to be a dimension of 2 inches. So I hit enter and now it has that dimension. So we dimension number 3 to 2 inches. We need to fix circles 1 and 2. So I'm still in my dimension. If you see my mouse, it's still in dimensions. I'm going to escape. Go to constraints and go to fix unfix. So if I click that, if I fix this circle number 1 and I fix number 2, they turn green. That just means they are no longer allowed to move in the sketch plane. They're stuck where they're at. If I hit escape, so now I have circles 2 and 3. If I try to drag them around, it won't let me. They are stuck where they're at, but I can drag circle number 3 around. So then the last part of this, make number 3 tangent to 1 and 2. So we have tangent constraints in here. Tangent just means a curve is going to touch another line, but only at one point. So if I click one circle and then the other, So now number 3 is tangent number 1, and if I click number 3 again, and I click number 2, it brings them down and again adds those glyphs to show that they're tangent, which just means that these lines only just touch and there's no region inside of that area that would be a solid space. Continuing on, same idea. We're going to click that tangent constraint, and I'm going to make this circle tangent to this line, and I'm going to make it tangent to this line. And you can see it shades in this region because now it has closed off the area between the line and the circle on both sides. So now this has also become a valid space, meaning it is closed on all sides. Going down to our next line of constraints, fix point C, make endpoints A and B coincident with point C. So fix, we've already done. We need to fix point C, so I'll click that. Point C is now fixed. I can hit escape. You can see the point of the center is green, but the circle is not, which means I could change the diameter of the circle because we haven't constrained that. We haven't dimensioned that circle, but that's okay for what we need to do. And now we need to make A and B coincident with C. So if I hit constraints, there's a coincident constraint, which just means points have to lay on top of one another. So I'm going to grab this point. Oh, we'll undo that. I had something selected already. Let's try that again. Coincident, we're going to grab point from A, we're going to hit point C, we're going to grab point B, and also touch point C, and now it's brought those lines as they were and just shifted them so that those points are on top of one another. That's what coincident means. It just means they're in the exact same position on this sketch plane. Make circles concentric. So our concentric constraint looks like two circles kind of overlapping one another like a target, because that's what a target is. It's concentric circles. So it doesn't matter what order I click in. I click the circles and I can make them all concentric with one another, which just means they all have the same center point, and we get the little glyph showing that that's the case. Make lines collinear. So this is similar to parallel. Right now these lines are parallel, but they are not collinear. So collinear, we look at even that tooltip for it, has two lines that are on the same line, just at different points. So if I make these collinear, you can see they kind of stack up on top of one another, but I could drag these points around. So these are collinear, they are the same line essentially, it's just they might be segmented between, or one might be, passing through the other. So these lines are collinear, but they are also parallel. Make these lines horizontal. So right now they're at some weird angle. We could make them parallel to one another, but that wouldn't necessarily make them exactly horizontal or flat. So to do that, we have the horizontal vertical constraint. So click that constraint and click these lines, and it gives them again this little tooltip that tells you that they are horizontal exactly. They have the 0 to 180 degree line. Same thing here, but technically opposite, I guess. Make lines vertical, same tool, vertical, horizontal tool. But if I click these lines, it makes them all exactly horizontal, and it's the same tooltip, but now it's just going up and down rather than to left and right. Make a triangle equilateral. So an equilateral triangle just means all three sides need to be the same length. So constraints, there's an equal constraint, and if I click one line then another, and then make this one equal to that one, so now all these lines are exactly the same, they're equal to one another. Similar to what we said before, this has two glyphs on it because it is equal to both that line and the line at the bottom, but that just means they're all three equal, and it is an equilateral triangle. At this point, I could grab any point in this triangle and move it around, and it would maintain being equilateral. Make the circles the same size, same tooltip. Well, let's click off of these. We're going to hit our equal tooltip, click one circle, click the other. Now they will always be the same size. So if I drag these around, they'll stay the same size relative to one another. Line up the centers of the circles on the same horizontal plane. So we do our constraints. Oh, let's deselect what we had. Take our constraints and we'll take collinear. We'll grab this point and that point. Now they're all on the same line together. And now we can do our horizontal, vertical, and grab our 2 points. Oh, where'd they go? They have moved over there for some reason. So let's undo some of that. Line up the center of the circles on the same horizontal plane. So maybe if we just grab the horizontal constraint and we can do it that way. So we talk through that once. Hitting our horizontal vertical constraint, we have all these circles in random places. We want them to be on the same line. So if we click circle 1 and then click circle 2, it makes them horizontal with one another. And then same thing if we click circle 3 and then click 1 or 2, it's going to make them all horizontal together. So if I go to drag these around, I can change their diameters. It's not going to affect one another, but if I grab the center point of any of these, they're all tied together. They must remain in relation to one another as far as the center point is concerned. So if you have any questions about these constraints that exist, let me know and we can work through that. But for now, you need to go to your worksheet section or your notes on the Canvas page, go to 133, and you need to complete steps 16 through 29. So the way you're going to do that, up here in the top right, or I guess we can save this first. So you'll save it as user save, that's fine. Save that so I can look at it later. You're going to add a new design. This new design is untitled. Go ahead and save that as well. You should name this 1.3.3. Just name it objects. That'll be good enough for me. And this is where I'm saving it. You should save it in your student file. You'll hit save. So now this 133 objects file will exist. So to begin, you're going to create a sketch here. And then using the line tool, you're going to sketch some things out as it tells you. Again, you need to look at steps 16 through 29, and then you should have a final sketch here in this position. So 133, those are the notes in Canvas. Do steps 16 through 29 for me.